how do we know what students know? That's kind of the age-old question. How do we know what students know? How do we know when we need to reteach? How do we know these things? When is it most appropriate for us to move on to the next lesson, to the next topic? When do we know these things? So I think that's a very good question that was posted in the APIA group, and there's some great responses. But just if I can add my 2 cents, from an educator's perspective, we really don't know, because that question really speaks to what you are looking to get out of your teaching. So if your teaching is just an issue of you just want to transfer knowledge, right? Knowledge from the textbook, the knowledge that's in your head into the student's head, then when you ask that question, how do we know? You're really gonna, when you answer the question, the automatic answer would be things like concept checking and assessments. Giving some type of an assessment to whether formal or informal assessment, to figure out whether the student knows. And I think that's correct in some, and from the perspective of, I just want students to know what's in my mind, what I said with the book, what's in the book. But for me, in 21st century teaching and 21st century learning, I think that question is a very, very difficult question, because my experience tells me that assessments are not always the indicator of what a student knows. Because in assessments, we have to ask ourselves whether we're asking the right questions. See, when we talk about differentiated instruction, we kind of submit ourselves to the fact that every student's a little bit different, and every student learns a little bit different. So if every student learns a little bit different, that means students learn based on perspective, and how they demonstrate what they know may be different and will be different. Now, obviously, in a social world, you have to be able to communicate that in some way. In academia, we ask students to communicate that in the written format or verbally, orally, right? But what if a student, that's not their talents, but they still know? What if their talents is to draw it? What if their talents is to create something? And isn't that ultimately what we want students to do? As lifelong learners, as individuals who have self-efficacy, we want them to take who they are and create something with the knowledge that we give them. Isn't that the true assessment of how a student knows? And the interesting thing is, as an educator, we also have to submit ourselves to the fact that we may not ever really see whether the student knows it or not, right? But they attribute a portion of what they know to you. They can attribute a portion to what they know to you, to that dynamic lesson you gave them 7 years, and they finally connect that lesson to something else that happened in their lives. And that's when we start talking about lifelong learning and students becoming responsible for their learning. So when we talk about whether a student knows, it's a very, very interesting question, because yes, if it's just an issue of regurgitating knowledge, then you give them assessment, you concept check, you ask questions. But if we're talking about taking teaching and learning to the next step, we have to agree that every student's a little bit different, therefore every student needs to be assessed a little bit different. So my answer to this question is yes, academically we ask students to mainly write and demonstrate what they know based on their writing, or based on them answering questions on a test, or basically based on them being able to verbally communicate that they know the answer. But I think that's a low level way of determining whether a student knows. I think there are a lot of other ways, because we have students who are very, very creative. And the problem with academia is that we don't give them an outlet to demonstrate their creativity, to express what they know. And some students are going to be able to express what they know in a very subjective way, and some students are going to be able to express what they know in a very objective way. So I just throw caution to the wind when we talk about what a student knows, and submit ourselves to the fact that we don't really know what a student knows, because it may be locked in their brain, but we may not be asking the right questions or giving them the appropriate amount of time to demonstrate what they know, or giving them the resources to show the world what they know, because they need more resources to create something, to build something. So it's an issue of asking the right question, it's an issue of time, it's an issue of resource. So you got to understand, in the world of academia, it's very easy to say, here, take this quiz, take this exam, or ask a question. I hope that brings a different perspective to the question of when do we know what student know? When do we know if a student or students know? Bye-bye. Be someone's champion.